Sundown Bay, one of my absolute favorite places to fish this time of year moving forward because you've got great structure that's here. You've got great structure on the shoreline, the bottom, everything is exactly what you want. This time of year, main thing you have to really pay attention to and watch is what your tides do this time of year because they can fluctuate quite a bit. Now, here recently, we've had lots of extra water into our system. Big old bull tide that's pushed in here to us, so we have a bunch of water that's been pushed in, so it's been very helpful. It's opened up back lake areas, and if you've been able to take advantage of that, that's good for you. What that also does is it helps push fish further back, whether it's either in a back lake or out front against a shoreline, whatever. It just gives you more opportunities in different areas that maybe have not been opened up for a little bit. But like I said, we've had this extra water here for a little bit now, so these fish have kind of pushed up against shorelines, again, in some of these back lake areas. That's the great thing about sundown is you can even get out in the middle of this thing and wade in. It might be a little bit deeper than you want to contend with, but if you're a pretty tall gal or girl, then you won't have a problem whatsoever pushing down off into this whatsoever because your bottoms are all muddy and you've got shell that's structured in here. You've got back lake mouths that push out into this Sundown Bay area, so it gives you lots of different opportunity and places to fish. You can get up into sundown and you can work it from one end to the other depending on which wind direction you've got. Now we've had a little bit of shift and change where we had little weak front that's coming in on us here that's show up here in the next couple of days. And we'll see what that does and see if it pushes any water because it will change how you approach an area and how you fish these particular areas. Bait's been plentiful in lots of places that we've been fishing, especially up here in Sundown, all these areas like this on the backside of the little spoil line there against the ICW, or the back shoreline there in Sundown, even up in the corners way back up toward Mustang and that area north of there, and then of course the south end there we got the little cut through that goes into a little back lake area there. So you've got a lot of different options that you can fish. We've been throwing soft dine XLs. I like the original colors or stuff that really mimics what bait fish, so I'm throwing a lot of the mullet flavored things. Get a little bit of sparkle in some of it, but most of the time it's a darker or solid flavor like that. Of course, it's got the big eyes on it, so it becomes very productive for you at times. Of course, our down south has been a staple for us. Always will be throughout the winter, summer, spring, and fall. It doesn't matter. I'm a big plastics guy. So, again, 16th ounce jig heads. We're just kind of letting that bait just going to glide through our water columns and let it take care of our see if we can't locate our fish and find areas that's going to hold fish, whether it be singles or doubles or maybe a small group. Uh, Big Papa, Twisted Tea, White Ice, Bone Diamond, Mud Minnow, Firecracker, depending on what your water flavor is, and if it's clear or dark, Watermelon Red. Little Johns have been good for us, and Golden Red Glitter, Kitchen Sink, Watermelon Red, and that as well. Knock and Tail lures in the Heavy Metal, Greenback, Rogue flavor, White Ice in that as well, a Pearl flavor. They've all been good. Pretty much the same consistent colors across the board. We've even, we've kind of worked in a little bit of also on the mirror lure side with the provokers have been okay. Haven't thrown a lot of those in there, but we've had some decent results with that. Of course, the suspended baits have starting to kind of lighten up for us and showing a way for us. So really spend some time with that. So it may be a little slow go, but you may have to stick with it for a little bit and just be patient with working these particular areas. Again, our majors and minors have been very good for us, primarily very productive in and around those time frames. Really make sure that moving forward throughout the winter times, those are areas that you really, or time frames that you really want to target when you're fishing a particular area, because it may take a little bit for a bite to kick in, and you may kick it and catch it just right and then knock it out of the park. So we're in our transition days, wild card days as I like to call them. So give yourself lots of options. The styles and the colors that I just mentioned will all be stuff that you should have in your box. If one particular thing doesn't work after a little bit, you can change it up. You can locate and find fish what you're looking for with different styles of bait. Blind Pass, Allen's Bight area, all down here down the Ranch House shoreline, back up into that area, Allen's area, back through here, backside of Mud. We've been really working some of these areas pretty well. You got big, nice grass flats that are here that's got a little bit deeper drop off for you. If you fish the backside of Mud, you know exactly where I'm talking about here, especially as you get further down toward the point. on the southwest end of this. As you move down that, you got a nice little edge there. Of course, you got a hard packed bottom where it's got that drop off, and then of course you've got grass flats that are up in there, and with the extra water that has been pushed in here for us, some of these back lakes have lightened up quite a bit as far as having fish pushed back in there. Bait's been pushed back in there. Water temps have been very, very good. They've been pretty mild, low 70s to mid 60s starting out, and then moving up a little bit as we've had a little bit more sunshine that's been on those. I would anticipate the same thing until we get to this next little front that's going to push in here. It's probably going to drop our temps a little bit, but we'll see how much once it's arrived and gets here and gets established. Big back lake here, it's got the cut through all this here, the back shoreline. We've been working that, been working out in the middle, been working the spoil islands out by the drop. Those particular areas that we found scattered fish, found some decent trout, lower slot trout that's been in there. There's been some nice mid-slot redfish have been there. Every once in a while, we've pulled out a flounder, which, as you well know, we're not be able to keep those at this point in time of the year, but they're still fun to catch and beautiful fish in it itself. So it's always fun to catch a solid one of those. And then we've been able to locate a couple of those back in here from time to time. We've been primarily focusing on the edge of the mangroves, the cuts that go back up into these little back lakes, fishing those. You've got lots of different kinds of structure in there. You've got great potholes. You got a good, nice, squishy bottom in there. You've got some scattered shell and some spots that are back in there. And then, of course, you've got the drop. And then you've got the edge out here as you get on the point of mud. You've got on the west side over here, and then you got the east side that's on this side here that you got a nice little drop off there. So, when that water temp's a little bit cooler, throw those suspended baits out there on those edges like that and see if you can find some fish that are holding in there. If you want to throw your plastics out on that thing and just be real patient with that, because again, once we have some water that kind of drops off, then this whole point way out here, it sets itself up pretty well because you got some deeper grass beds. That's where your double D, where an ascending style bait comes into play. So you can bang those things down around that grass bed like that and let those things float up real slow. So it can become very, very productive with that. You get some really good strikes, some quality fish that could be hanging off in these areas, but you have to work it. You won't know it until you throw it. So just be patient when you work these areas like that. Again, the same culprits we've been throwing, what I just mentioned a minute ago. We've been throwing the suspended baits, double D's, been some of these in this a little bit deeper water. A double D's a great bait in that 2.5 to 3 foot of water because you can really work that thing down into those and work it around those beds. And then, of course, your soft dines, your soft dine XLs. If you're a corky person, those become into play moving forward. If you haven't already been throwing some of these, you've got your down south in multiple flavors. I've been primarily throwing the original size, which is the 4-inch, and then, of course, a lot of the burner shad as well. Because we're fixing to be we are into our wild card days, moving toward a full moon. So, again, give yourself lots of options in these kind of areas like this. So color-wise, size-wise, profile, everything. So you may want to have a handful of a little bit, 7 or 8 different styles of baits that you may want to be able to tie on there if you have that opportunity to throw it. Or if you've got multiple personnel that are with you, then everybody can have something a little bit different on, and y'all can see and kind of narrow it down a little quicker. But, again, take your time, find your bait work in these areas, find the structure that's in that. You can locate and find you some fish in there. Again, the majors and minors are a key point of emphasis. Again, with our weather patterns, it's going to be kind of dicey moving forward. So pay attention to that as well and what your tides are going to be doing, because I'm sure some of that's going to fluctuate quite a bit here in the next few days. Down here in Italian Bend, this area down in here has been really good for us. You get lots of protection from the north. You get protection from your east. You get protection from your south. The only one that's really opened up to it is your west wind if it's blowing right into this thing, maybe west, northwest, something like that. That's the only really tough wind that you would have difficulty fishing this. Of course, there are ways that you can fish it even with that particular wind in play, but the rest of them you get some pretty good protection no matter what. And that's the things that you're going to have moving forward this time of year. You're going to have some big winds that are come in, some of these cold fronts that's going to push in here, and a day or two you may see some 15 to 25 mile an hour winds and gusts, maybe a little bit more than that. But if you can safely navigate to some of these spots, you can really set yourself up to have some pretty good days as the structure is correct. You've got tremendous amount of bait that's in here. Only thing you have to really worry about is against duck hunters. There's a bunch of duck blinds that are back in this area here and a few bangers every once in a while. So especially toward the weekends. It's not so much during the week. If you're able to fish during the week, you can give yourself opportunities, not have to duck your head on sometimes. But Italian Bend's been pretty good for us. Been fishing both the shoreline because of all the extra water that's been in play here, so it's pushed fish back. There's a bunch of little back lake mouths that dump into these, so it gives you opportunity. Maybe throw you a topwater back in some of these areas, see if you can't find a redfish or maybe a quality trout that's laying back in one of those areas, just kind of cruising, looking for something to eat. Our water temps back in some of these areas have been to the mid 60s to the low 70s, which is very comfortable, very manageable. Still, you may still want to use waders, but if you know that sun's going to be peaking out there and your temp's going to be getting up, then you know if you want to try to still wet wade, you obviously can. But moving forward, everything's going to be waders for myself and most of everybody that's on the boat with me anyway. So working Italian Bend here, you got a great grass line that's back in this area here. Again, the bait is right there. You've got the right kind of bottom with squishiness and the mud that's back in here, so it's going to hold some decent heat for you. You can continue to work out on this sandbar all the way out here to the point around here, and then come around that like you're heading back toward the 188 boat ramp that's right over there. So if you want to put in there, which I see several people always do, that's a really short run from that particular location. So if you know where I'm talking about there, that's easy to get to this point. And if you have a north wind that's kicking, you can stay protected for the most part around that. So, you know, fish this area here. You can get out here on the edge here, which is a little bit deeper, or you can come back up in here a little bit tighter to the shoreline. But again, it's going to be tide predicated on what you can and can't do in some of these particular areas. So that's why the tides are really important this time of year. So when you get the luxury of having extra water there, it opens up more water for you. So just keep that in mind as we move forward over the next few days, and keep an eye on what that wind's going to be doing, what the tidal movement's going to be doing, how much it's going to be moving. Again, down souths have been good for us in multiple different flavors. You know, bone diamond, white ice, twisted tea, big papa. In both the original and the burner shad size, and then of course the knock and tail lure in those three main flavors in rogue, heavy metal, and greenback have all been very good for us as well, especially in the 4-inch. As you get closer to that full moon, you may want to downsize to a little bit smaller bait, you know, 3.5 to 3-inch bait. That's where the soft dine really comes in there. It's a little bit shorter profile bait, a little bit fatter and thicker. Of course, you got the eyes that are on that, so it really can be very good for you. Of course, the only thing is, if you get into some redfish, it's probably not going to last very long, so make sure you have a couple of extra baits of that, because redfish tend to kind of tear those baits up pretty quick. Also, your double D, again, that, and of course the mirror lure, Little John's, in multiple different flavors. You know, red and gold glitter, kitchen sink, watermelon red's been good for us. Those are all three pretty solid flavors that's moving forward into this time of year. So just make sure that you continue to pay attention to your majors and minors, tides, weather, and all that stuff comes into play this time of year. Just make sure you're safe out there on the water.